Among Starship engineers, it is said that no two FTL systems are identical. This saying refers to something very fundamental in FTL science. The idea of cross-cultural dissimilarity. A peculiar quirk in cultural development which results in every civilization that has ever crossed the light barrier doing so in a different way. Take for example the Illum, whose vessels are incredibly dense, armor-plated spheres, which have accelerated like a railgun projectile between two binary stars, tearing a wormhole at the exact midpoint between the two suns, and slowing down by plunging directly through the outer plasma of another star. There's more math behind it, of course, but this is the gist. Or a dart engine of the Zylvestis, which uses a novel kind of fractionalizing radiation to make the vessel it is attached to simultaneously exist at every point within several light years of its origin point, in a state of quantum fog, before condensing back into matter at its destination. Once again, more math, but this is basically how it works. It is, therefore, rather difficult to detect, and therefore assemble a greeting party for any newly minted superluminal species, while remaining totally hands-off beforehand. It is therefore an unfortunate necessity to, yes, spy on primitive civilizations which look close to reaching that particular hurdle in their development. The galactic community truthfully cannot handle another contact war, and many species are very territorial indeed, some to the point of shooting first and asking questions later when an unidentified vessel appears out of nowhere over their capital world, making this spying a necessity. Luckily, it only takes a single individual per civilization, as the development of FTL technology necessitates a planetary unification before it can be accomplished. The problem tends to be too complex for one nation-state to solve on its own, without devolving its entire scientific community towards it. It just so happened that the spy assigned to a small blue-green planet circling a Type G star had just phoned home and reported on promising developments in the scientific community of the civilization occupying that planet. Unknowingly shadowed by a medical scout vessel, courtesy of their nearest stellar neighbours, the UNE Lightbreaker was rapidly approaching the position calculated by the eggheads back home to have the least spatial coherence, and therefore the best chances for successfully opening an interstellar gateway. This point was in a relatively empty part of the Oort cloud, as far away from the outer gas giants as possible. This also made it very quiet, and very dark. Within the vessel, tension could probably be cut with a knife. 7 humans, the best and brightest, stared stone-faced at their assigned stations, occasionally glancing at the countdown to their little experiment. They would be pioneers, likely remembered forever, but only if they didn't fuck up right now. We've reached a critical position. Alright, fire her up. If metal could scream, it would, as the reactor core began its slow wind-up. Suspended within a near-perfect vacuum, the core was mounted on a rotating wheel that was theoretically capable of spinning nearly 99.997% the speed of light for roughly 20 minutes. After that, the space-time distortion of such an immense velocity difference would heat the metal enough to cause it to deform, until 2 metal bits, one moving at near C and one not, collided and instantaneously turned the entire ship, and anything nearby, into a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated plasma. This extreme velocity difference was necessary, at the so-called Eye of the Storm, the center of the hourglass-shaped reactor core. An infinitesimal blob of exotic matter floated in perfect stasis. Ordinarily just a bit of gravitationally repellent, this blob, when excited by extreme spatial shearing, was capable of sort of grinding together 2 parts of the universe, which would then theoretically open a kind of wormhole into whatever it was that existed outside of space-time. That was where the proven science ended, however, and what happened after that wormhole formed was what they were out here to find out. Within the medical scout, several warning lights began to rapidly cycle. First blue, then yellow, and finally green. The ship's internal space distortion sensor picked up an immense amount of warping space-time within the human craft, the intensity of which soon exceeded their instruments. Ordering the ship moved back to a safe distance, the crew watched in horror as space around the human vessel contorted, stretched, frayed, and finally snapped, tearing apart the very fabric of reality around its chrome hull. Shaking off their stupor, the captain ordered his crew to move in for an assist, only to watch in horror as the blackness surrounding the human vessel formed into a void-like tentacle, gripping the sleek metal and pulling it under, into a direction that made their senses shriek in offense at its non-existence. Those same tentacles began feeling outwards from the hole in space, when suddenly there was an immense tidal shift, and the universe seemed to grind two slates of space-time over the rupture, sealing it shut and cutting off any remaining bits of whatever monstrosity was attempting to come through. The emotionless voice of the ship computer startled the bridge crew of the IL Morning Dew, leader of the Galactic Community Welcoming Fleet, currently stationed at the humans' projected FTL destination. Receiving priority message from the scout stationed at the humans' first FTL test. Message reads, Human drive successful. Departure confirmed. Unknown hostile force present within human FTL medium. Current vessel status unknown. Measure time signature reads 31:42:55. Now that's alarming. They should be here any second now. I hope they're alright. As if to answer that question, all three ambassadors shielded their eyes as an immense flash of light lit up the dead of space just ahead. The universe seemed to almost bulge outwards, before snapping back and splitting out the dented chrome hull of the human prototype, space already shifting behind it to seal up the hole, through which they could see, even now, an unfathomable sea of eyes and slick black tentacles. The slates slammed together, cutting off four of the tentacles still wrapped around the human craft, leaving them to dissipate into nothing. We are receiving a hail. On screen, translator enabled. A frazzled-looking human appeared on their view screen, momentarily baffled. He opened his mouth and spoke words that would end up in history books for all time. Aliens are real.